Hello sim racers and welcome back to Fixed Setup Weekly. Today we're going to be taking a look at week 6 of season 3. We've got ARCA at Watkins Glen, C Fixed at iRacing Superspeedway, and B Fixed and A Fixed are both at North Wilkesboro. Kind of an oddball week as NASCAR takes a few weeks away for the Olympic break, so it's going to be some strange times for the next 2 weeks in Fixed Setup Racing, but we're going to cover it all just the same because it's all official racing. It all pays out iRating and safety rating just the same. How did week 5 go for you? Did you jump into New Hampshire? Was it magical for you? Or did you prefer to stick to ARCA at Indianapolis Motor Speedway? I heard a lot of nightmare stories from people who ran at New Hampshire this past week, but I heard a lot of positive feedback from people who ran ARCA at Indy, so it was sort of a tale of two cities, if you will, when it came to the content that we cover here. ARCA was definitely preferred. I ran a poll over on my community tab here on YouTube, and that was the majority vote. I should put it on screen right now to show you. Yep, there it is. So yeah, New Hampshire, I saw a lot of really bad clips too on Twitter. Netcode, something about the backstretch wall that if you hit it just right would make you crash, and just really, really bad dive bombs, bad racing, a lot of crashes. Ugh. I didn't do any official racing. I took the week off myself. But with what we have coming up this week, I'm not sure I'm going to be doing much of it either. Maybe I'll hop on my alternate account and do it there. It's going to be... For this week's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different to try to simplify things, get right down to the meat and potatoes of the content that everybody wants to see. Let me know down in the comment section below if you prefer the style of this video versus what you've seen in the past. I'll be curious to get your feedback. I'm always looking for feedback on ways to make this video series the best that it can be. I know there's a large community of people out there who can benefit from this information, and I just need to learn how to reach them better, what it is about my content that's not appealing, not reaching them, at least not yet, and what I can do to change that. So, that said, let's get into this week's content. Welcome to Watkins Glen, one of my favorite road courses in the entire world. This is a really, really fun racetrack. Very fast, high speeds here in the ARCA car. It's slippery. We got the usual no rear grip like we have when this car is on an oval, but now it's even worse because it's on a road course and we're trying to change directions and it doesn't like doing that. So yeah, that's what we got. But it is fun to drive. If you're not a road course enthusiast, I'm with you. I'm not either. I don't like doing this stuff. And usually I bring in Nate Stewart to do road course racing tutorials for these videos, but Nate wasn't available this week, so it's me. So you're stuck with me. I'm sorry, but I'll show you my best lap and give you sort of a little guide how to get around here in the ARCA car. It's pulling away here on pit road. It's a pretty tight little access road and blends you onto the straightaway leading up to the S's, which are turn 2 and turn 3. Right-hander and a left-hander. Just sort of take a light lap around here so you get a sense of it. Uphill, right-hander, left-hander, and then another right-hander. Gets really narrow and sends you out onto this straightaway. Traditionally, there's the bus stop right here, but on this layout that we're running, it's called the classic layout. You actually don't take the bus stop, which then just sends you into the sweeper. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos going into this turn with no bus stop. It's going to be something else. So long right-handers, the sweeper. Takes you onto another straightaway. For a left-hand turn, slow left-hand turn. Not a lot of runoff area around here either. It's grass out there, so if you miss it or go wide, you're in trouble. Final turn, right-hander, under the sprint bridge, and we're onto the front straightaway. Long front straightaway, get up to third gear, set up for turn 1. Slow right-hander. A lot of runoff area. You probably see a lot of people go wide there and come back onto the track, so be aware of that. And again, up through the S's. Rear end gets really light right there. You really got to pedal it. Hard to go full throttle all the way through here. Car really struggles for rear grip. And then we're down the straightaway again. No bus stop. Not a bad idea to start slowing down early to make sure you make this turn. Let the car ride up a little bit so then you can pull it to the bottom. Get a good run out of here. Down this straightaway for the left-hander. And the final turn. So that's kind of a look at the track. Not quite at full speed, but at speed nonetheless. Looking at the setup for this week, it is Watkins Glen Classic. There's 2 versions. I made sure to grab the right one. I finally did the right layout. Finally. I'm notorious for doing the wrong layout of these tracks. I made sure to look. It is the classic layout, so I'm running the classic setup. I stuck with basically default values, 10-to-1 steering ratio. I didn't touch the brake or the steering offset. The brake bias I played around with, I put it at 66. I think by default it's 68. 66 felt pretty good. Once you start dropping this thing too low, it really does get hard on corner entry to really not lose the rear end. So I think you want to keep the brake bias a little bit higher. These are the settings that I'm going to run with if I do any of these, but for my hot laps, this will be the setting that I use. 10-to-1, default steering offset, and 66% brake bias. Taking a look at the tires just after a couple laps of wear, about 3 laps on this run, and you can see that the rear tires are taking a beating, and these are going to be the tires that are going to be the hardest to take care of in road course racing. It's just the nature of the beast with these stock cars. A lot of horsepower, and you really want to get on that throttle to get moving, but really that's how you tear up the rear tires, and I'm famously bad at it, and I think that could be said for the majority of people who don't do this a whole lot. So if there's one thing to keep an eye out for this week, it's your rear tires. How do you do that? Easy on that throttle pedal. You got to roll into it. It's not all or nothing. There's a whole range in between there that you got to work. And the guys that can do that are the guys that are going to find a lot of success this week in the ARCA car. It's a fun drive, but it's a very narrow margin for error. If you miss that braking zone by just a little bit, your whole turn is done. You're probably going to make the tires really mad, and you're going to be struggling for grip for a little while as well until the temperatures come back down on those tires. So don't overdrive. As I always say, when it comes to road course racing, rule number 1, keep your car on the track. The drivers that can keep their car on the track the most have the best chance of success. Don't beat yourself. Let the other drivers in your race run themselves out of it by going off track, running wide, spinning out, overdriving the corners, and taking each other out with ridiculous dive bombs into the braking zones. Just take care of yourself, keep all 4 tires on the asphalt, and you're going to give yourself an incredibly good chance of getting a good result out of the races this week. Welcome to iRacing Superspeedway, home of the memes and home to see fixed this week. If you're going to take this on and you want to qualify up front, you got to set a fast lap. How do you do that? I'm about to show you. In the garage screen, the only thing that I'm doing is putting that steering ratio up to 16:1 so that I can be as smooth as possible with my steering wheel input so I'm not cutting speed. That is the #1 enemy to a good lap around this track, is losing speed by scrubbing it when you turn the steering wheel. 16:1 ratio should lead to the least amount of tire scrub. Now, the interesting thing about iRacing Superspeedway is these yellow lines on the right-hand side, you don't want to touch those. That will make you go back and restart your lap. So you actually kind of got to slow down a little bit on the flat apron here. And then once you can pretty much see the backstretch, you can go. But if you touch those yellow lines, it's probably going to pop you for an early merge, and you'll have to start that lap over. Now, as we get up to speed for this part of it and the first lap, you're going to want to stay high up on the racetrack to build that speed. Somewhere around this seam is good. You don't want to be all the way up against the wall. Whatever allows you to be smooth so that you're not scrubbing speed. That's the name of the game. All right, starting the flying lap here. Let the truck just sort of wander down to the bottom of the track. You don't need a lot of steering input. It'll sort of just take itself down there. The idea is to be on the bottom already by the time you get to the turn. So that way you don't have to really use a lot of steering input or lose any time. Let the truck sort of pop up out of turn 2 right to the middle of the track. No need to go all the way out to the wall. And we're going to do the same thing down here in turn 3. Let the truck find its way down to the bottom without any steering input. So we're right there, right on that line. Hold it all the way through. Don't fight the wheel coming out. And now we ride it to the start-finish line. Don't even need hands. Let's see the lap time. 50.242 is the lap for me. Hey, I beat Jimmy Broadbent. So the cool thing is when you jump into a race, you start on the front straightaway like diagonal. And so you'll pull away like that. It looks really cool, and they do it at other places like Charlotte and I think maybe Texas on pit road. But it can cause some chaos for people, so watch out for that. Definitely don't start pulling away until you see the truck next to you pull away. That's really my best rule of thumb. Don't pull away until the guy next to you does. Now, I've given myself an end of longest line penalty because it's just more fun. One thing to be aware of, this front straightaway is banked, and sometimes people will actually spin their tires. I don't know if it's going to be an issue. It seems to be okay in C-Fixed. Second gear start. I don't think you have to worry about tire spin here. I know we've seen it in A-Fixed. We'll probably see that next week when A-Fixed and B-Fixed are at this track. But for C-Fixed, I think you're fine in second gear. And, you know, I guess the AI are a little too weak. It won't be this easy for you in real C-Fixed, but gives you an idea of how big this track is. A lot of room to run, but when you get down here, you're going to see people really struggle to figure out what lane they want to run in. This steep banking really throws them for a loop. It'll be really herky-jerky. Plus, you're going really freaking fast. So everything happens a lot faster at 230 miles an hour. The runs, the checkups, the decisions, and we're wrecking. Ah!
Got one inside.
Oh, that's realistic.
Clear.
So there you go. See fixed at iRacing Superspeedway.
Dropping a lot of fluid. We have to fix it.
You're probably going to hear that once or twice. So let's take a couple of touring laps around North Wilkesboro so you can see what it looks like. This is, again, a short track, very old school short track. Very fun, though. Coming out of turn 4 here onto the start-finish straight. Turn 1 is sort of a interesting radius. You actually want to get right down to the bottom towards that grass. That's really the best way to get through there on fresh tires. But the line can move up the racetrack as the run goes on as well. So you're going to need to explore a little bit. Sometimes you're going to need to take a little bit higher entry. And you can really defend from this top side if you do it right. The car on the bottom is at a disadvantage because they can't wind out to the wall on exit. It really hurts their speed. So you can use this top lane to really defend if you need to. And sometimes you can jump out here on a restart and catch some people sleeping because they want to try and fight for the bottom. You can use that to your advantage. Take a little more shallow entry into 1. You got to be very careful not to let that right side get up onto the outside car, cause a big wreck. Down into 3, the entry comes up a lot faster than you think. If you're gonna hug this bottom and not wipe out the guy next to you, gotta be really, really disciplined with that throttle pedal. If you take a shallow entry into 3, there's bumps down here. Doesn't really upset the car a whole lot, but it can, especially as you get back to the throttle. But that's one of the great things about this racetrack is you have a lot of options of where you can run depending on what your situation is. But you got to be careful to not do that coming out of 2. Don't hit that wall. And that backstretch wall is interesting because there's a cutout in the middle of it. Let's take a look at it on the way by. You can get some really interesting wrecks here if you're not careful. As you come out of turn 2, you'll see there's a cutout right here where the wall stops because there's a crossover gate, and then the wall starts again. You will see somebody get doored into this, and you can imagine what happens at that point. They hit that, shoot right back across the track, and you'll see the biggest wreck you've ever seen in your life. I just finished up a 20-something lap run to see how this thing does in sort of race trim. You better be bringing your A game for the B car this week. See what I did there? This thing is challenging. It's perfect. I love it. It feels right. It feels like a race car on a racetrack. You gotta finesse it. A little short track trick here and there. It's gonna go a long way. But this thing is fun. It's probably gonna be a bloodbath, but it's fun. Okay, so you can see I went out here. I started my run on lap 7 and ended at lap 28. So about a 20-lap run. I started at a 19 flat, ended up around a 19.6, 7, somewhere around there. But consistently, yeah, losing some time as we go, but it's not a whole lot of fall off. You definitely feel a lack of rear grip, a lack of front grip in the center of the corner, but this thing is so throttle happy that you're going to be tearing the rear tires off before you're tearing the front tires off. I do believe. So what were the wheel settings that I used for this 20-lap run? In the garage, I used a 12-to-1 steering ratio, left the offset at +6, and moved the front brake bias to 67%. I think stock was 68. I dropped it just a little bit. You're going to want it up there, though. It really helps the stability and security of the car getting into the turns to have it up that high. You're probably going to want to move it up even more as the run goes on if you get a long green flag run. I moved it up during my 20-lap run. It just helps keep the car balanced on entry. As the grip goes away when the tires wear, you need something to counteract that, and the best way to do that on a short track is to increase that front brake bias. That'll help you out a ton. Taking a look at the tire wear, right rear tire was worn 3% more than the right front. Not surprised by that. Could definitely feel that as I was driving it. But it all comes down to how you control that throttle pedal. You will hurt your tires more with the throttle pedal than you will with the steering wheel. It seems sort of weird from what we're accustomed to and more neutral to tight setups. But when a setup's like this, it rotates on throttle instead of with the steering wheel. That's what you're going to get. This is a blast to drive. If you really struggled in A-Fixed last week at New Hampshire, you're probably going to feel some of the same struggle here in the B car at North Wilkesboro. The same stuff applies. Same principles, same theories, same concepts, all of that. That throttle discipline really applies here. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I said last week for New Hampshire in the A car with the high horsepower, low downforce package. Practice holding 60 to 70% throttle around the turns here at New Hampshire, or North Wilkesboro, and just practice that by yourself. That's a nice little exercise that I think is a really good thing to do to teach throttle discipline. Load up a practice session just by yourself so you don't feel any pressure from anyone else, and just practice holding 60 to 70% throttle through the turns, and then wait until you're on the straightaway and roll into the throttle pedal at that point. Do that. It may take you 20, 30, 40, 50 laps of practice, but if you invest the time to practice that and really maximize your practice to get comfortable with what it feels like to have that throttle discipline, it will pay dividends beyond dividends in the race. You will notice it, you will see it, and you'll be like, wow, this is so much easier. This is unbelievable. I'm not killing my tires. I'm not spinning out. Trust me on this. That's something you really need to spend some time doing if you're struggling. All right, let's talk about A-Fixed then. I'm confused. I'm just going to tell you this right now. I am confused. This car drives like it has the high downforce package on it, but when you look at it, it has the low downforce visuals. This car clearly does not have high horsepower. That much is evident. I just did a 20-lap run. We'll look at the lap times and tire wear and all that in a sec, but this car is not the high horsepower package in driving it, but visually it has the high horsepower package on it. It's got the small spoiler, but no big motor. It's very strange. I don't know if we had the high horsepower package at New Hampshire, a bigger track than this, so I don't know why we wouldn't have it at this track. So maybe this will get resolved in a hot fix, after this video goes out. I have no idea. Okay, let's do some test laps around North Wilkesboro just so you can get a sight and sound on it from the A car. When you come off pit road, you pretty much blend immediately onto the racetrack, so be aware of that. Not that you're going to see green flag pit stops in A-Fixed, but just something to be aware of that's unique about this track. When you come off pit road, you're pretty much, you're right there in the bottom groove of the racetrack, so just be aware of that. I'm doing 12-to-1 right now, 63% brake bias. And it feels pretty good. Basically, you just sail it in here and hold the throttle on exit. It's really all there is to it. It's kind of disappointing that it's not as throttle loose or anything like the B car is. Kind of boring, to be honest with you, but that's what we got. And you see, you just want to cut a real nice 1 and 2. You clip that grass. Don't touch it with the tires. That'll definitely make the car very unhappy. but you can just pull the car down to the bottom there to apex it at the grass, get out to the wall and exit. So for the 20-lap run, I started in 18.8 and just sort of stayed in 18.8s for a long time and ended up around a 19.2. So as you can see, I was very consistent across my 20 laps, and there's not a lot of fall off. Very indicative of the high downforce, low horsepower package. It's pretty much you get it into the corner, you point it straight off the corner, and you mash the throttle. That's how I know it's not high horsepower. It is full throttle mash on corner exit, no problem. Unlike a week ago at New Hampshire, where you could not do that at all. Just can't do that. It's very obvious that something's wrong here. But that was the 20 laps. Looking at the tire wear then, right front was worn more than the right rear. Again, more proof that it's the low horsepower, high downforce package. I was overdriving it. Had too low of a steering ratio, too high of a brake bias because I thought it was going to be the high horsepower package. So, yeah, I mean, that result doesn't surprise me. Still drove okay, but you don't want a worn right front. So I'm not surprised that that's what I got. For the setup, I ran a 10-to-1 steering ratio and 66% brake bias. Way wrong for this package. You could probably do a 12 or a 14 steering ratio. I think 16 is going to be too slow for a short track. So either 12 or 14, whatever you like best. And you could probably drop the brake bias to like 63, 62% without a problem. So that would be my recommendation for that. Like the B car, you can run a little bit higher up the racetrack if you want to. It's probably going to be better for defending. If people dive to the inside like here in 1 and 2, just run right above that first dash line. You'll get a great run down the back straightaway and probably keep them at bay. Now, of course, the only problem is they're probably going to overdrive the next corner entry because they're frustrated. They can't pass you, and they'll door you up the track, and, you know, that's the way it goes. But when you're by yourself and you're not trying to battle anybody, you can run this line down here in 3 and 4 if you really want to. But I think overall, with how snug this car is, you're actually better served to enter a little higher and try and get a straight drive off the corner. See how I did that right there? All the speed that I get down the straightaway from doing that. Helps a lot when you do it that way. If you try to run it on the bottom, you really have to slow it down a lot. You turn the wheel a lot. You're probably hurting that right front tire more than you need to. So that's a little tour of North Wilkesboro and the A car. Not as fun as the B car, but maybe that means the racing will be better. I don't know. And that'll do it for this episode of Fix Setup Weekly. Thank you so much for checking it out. Remember, if this video helped you out, help me out. Leave a thumbs up on the video and a comment down below. I'd love to get your thoughts on Week 6, what you're looking forward to, and what you're staying far, far away from. If you want to watch my iRacing adventures, you can do that over on my Twitch channel. That's linked down in the description below. And if you're new around here and want to see more content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you be a part of this growing community. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and have a great week of racing.